Please stand for our invitation by Mr. Will Grace.
Thank you. Would you pray with me, please? Dear Lord, we give thanks today for your many blessings. We express our gratitude for that which we enjoy as a community and ask for your guidance and direction as we seek solutions to better meet the needs of one and all. Help us continue to do your will and our best in our various endeavors, so as to ensure Greenville remains a special place to live, work, and visit. It's in your name we lift this prayer. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember John DeWorkin.
Here.
Councilmember Lillian Fleming. Councilmember Ken Gibson.
Here.
Councilmember Will Brazington.
Here.
Councilmember Russell Stahl.
Here.
Councilmember Dorothy Dow.
Here.
Mayor Knox White.
Here, you have the minutes of March 28th, which stand approved as submitted, unless there are any objections. Seeing none, we move on. We have no one who signed up to speak to us. I am so informed tonight. But I believe we do have a presentation, Mr. Manager. Is that right? Is that at this point of the hearing? I thought you wanted to do annexation. That's what I was, much postponed, so I thought perhaps.
Back again. Good evening.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I have to admit that and say thank you to Tara Eaker, who helped design this presentation for us a couple months ago. She did the artistic work for us on this. So
Look at that sunburst. Oh,
I
my
know.
gosh. Oh.
So this is just a quick generalized update of our annexation efforts. You all asked this to be a city priority, and our planning and development team has focused our efforts in annexation. And I thank Austin Rutherford and John Hamlet for their hard work. Megan, if we could go to the next slide, please. So the first thing that our team did with annexation earlier this year was to try and remove barriers to annexation. I think that we really examined ways in which our process was precluding people from wanting to annex into the city. So one of the things that we did was take a hard look at all of our requirements and how we could simplify those requirements and make it easier for annexation. We removed the annexation fee, which was a $550 fee. We removed that fee altogether. And we also removed the annexation plat requirement, which previously someone would have to pay to have a surveyor come in and perform that work. And that is at least $1,000 worth of savings. So now the city staff is doing that work through our own GIS mapping capabilities. We also reduced the application load to ensure that we were only requiring the necessary information. And in fact, many times our staff will just fill out all the information for the applicant and hand it for them to sign and review. We've also taken over the neighborhood meetings that were previously developer-led, and this is pending a text amendment for you all to actually maybe possibly remove those, except for the zoning. As you all know, we're waiting for that to be finalized, but that will actually come to you later this month. But that if there's not a change in the zoning, now if there's a change in the zoning, it would come to council. But if there's not a change in the zoning and it's the same zoning as what's in the county, and we're just taking it in, that would not require a neighborhood meeting. Again, just trying to simplify the process. We're also monitoring the county rezoning requests and other municipal council agendas. So staff is looking at those every month at the municipal council agendas to see what's happening in those areas and where annexations might be occurring, and to ensure that there's no overlap within our water covenant boundary. And then also we have changed our public notice signs for proposed annexation signs that are being used prior to planning commission. So we've really tried to reduce all of the barriers to this process and to make it as easy as possible, and staff carry the weight of those applications on annexation. Next slide, please. So then we asked, how can we better communicate our annexation benefits to the community? Our communications team worked with us on all new brochures and flyers, which you see here, and I think some of y'all have actually seen them in person. And we updated our website to reflect all of the new imagery and the new information. Our annexation team uses these materials as we actively pursue annexation opportunities. We write letters to the community. We insert the brochures, trying to do as much as we can to get the word out about our annexation efforts. And part of what we've included here are the many benefits as to why someone would want to annex in the city of Greenville. We want the public to know that our benefits include enhanced police and fire protection. You heard that tonight earlier in the budget meeting. Case in point, that we also have lower water rates and we have superb neighborhood programs and support. And I think just hearing the budget presentation from our leadership team today helped show all of the many benefits to our city municipal organization. Next slide, please. So what are our goals for 2022? Well, we want to set up our city for future success and annexation. We want to secure the city's territorial presence for future healthy growth. And we want to grow population within the existing neighborhoods to provide better services, usually at a lower price. And so if we could go to the next slide. As we move towards goal A, we want to ensure that we are annexing existing water covenant parcels that have contiguity. As you know, our staff has been researching all of the water covenants to ensure that we are actually annexing what has previously been signed. Therefore, they have found numerous covenants over the many years that haven't been pursued for annexation that are now contiguous to city limits. Two of those include Goodwill and Lead Academy that will be going before April Planning Commission meeting. Those are two of the 4 annexations that will be going to Planning Commission. Our team has worked diligently to ensure that all the water covenant properties are being thoroughly reviewed. And through that, we have found some anomalies, such as properties that had signed a water covenant and now are located in a different jurisdiction. So those are the types of things that we're trying to avoid in the future through being able to keep all this. And so our intern for this year actually worked with Austin to map all the water covenants.
Let me underline that because it's going kind of fast because I haven't talked to a lot of council members about this. So in other words, we have properties that signed a water covenant and then later became annexed by Malden.
Or a different jurisdiction.
Or a different jurisdiction. I thought I'd be specific. And that's not the way we intended this thing to work. Okay.
That is correct. So we want to ensure that we don't follow that same path in the future and that we ensure proper annexation. As we work towards goal B, which is again, securing the city's territorial presence for future healthy growth, we are looking at options within our water covenant boundaries, or for example, opportunities that we haven't previously explored. And we can go back to the next slide, Megan. For example, and I know this is kind of blown up, but we wanted to show you, there's actually pieces of the property at Conisty that we didn't annex as part of the last annexation in 2019 that we have found, and we are going to annex those properties in. And it seems small, but it's important that we have all of that within the jurisdiction for the city of Greenville. And so we've been working with the Conisty board to be able to bring those in for annexation. So those are the kinds of opportunities that John and Austin are always looking for, is where can we grow those boundaries. And then is the next slide, please, as we continue to work on the donut holes for annexation, Councilor DeWorkin has specifically asked us to work with our legislative lobbyists to make this a priority for the city for next session. And we plan to do that starting in June after session ends in May. We have been able to annex a couple of the donut holes, and you'll see those coming forward. But the inability for us right now to be able to force annex the donut holes definitely causes an issue for us in terms of providing services. In particular, even being able to address properties. So recently we were working with a developer on a road that is part of the state road system. And because the right-of-way wasn't going to be within the city, it causes major issues for our fire department for response. And we were learning about just how imperative it is that the right-of-way be included in order to avoid there being a duplication of services. What we don't want to have is trying to send out the sheriff's office and the police and or 2 different fire departments. So those are the kinds of things that we continue to struggle with in terms of trying to make sure that by annexing these donut holes, we want to avoid those situations in the future. We also have learned an important lesson that we want to annex the right-of-way with a parcel in front of it in the future to ensure that we don't have any issues with emergency services.
So may I ask a question here to either of you, Councilmember DeWorkin or are you, Shannon? We think there could be some sort of state level legislative cure that would allow a municipality in the case of a donut hole just to.
You want me to answer that?
Fill in?
Yeah. So basically, with my day job, I get to work with these people that represent these interests. And so I actually had a long conversation with the number two person to the Association of Counties. And I talked about the issues that we have. And the Association of Counties typically have had concerns about this particular issue, giving up that right. And so had a long conversation and actually showed him a map of Greenville City. And I told him all these issues that we're having. And the conversation really evolved to an earnest willingness to sit down and to say, okay, if we're going to go down this journey of allowing donut holes to be annexed in, what does that look like legislatively? So we're going to, Shannon, that's
great.
pretty accurate.
Yes,
John,
that's exactly
what-
right.
John, what's the role of the municipal association in this? I mean, you have the county involved. Is the municipal association also involved?
Yeah, so sorry, Russell, I forgot you were on. I should say Russell was really the one that got this started and got me energized to start having conversations in Columbia. Municipal Association will play a large part in this for sure. But I think when you look at legislation, like what we do, how motivated are groups or how motivated are people to get something done? And so I haven't gauged the motivation or the eagerness of the Municipal Association to do this, but certainly they will play a large part in this conversation.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Megan. So as we work with Goal C, which is to grow our population within existing neighborhoods to provide better services, usually at lower prices, we have several ongoing conversations with properties at our city edge right now. And we are pursuing those as part of our economic development strategy. So some of that will be coming forward to you in the future. I want to thank our OMB director, Matt Efert, for the amount of time he has invested in providing specific tax analyses for individual properties. There is not a week that goes by that I don't see Austin asking him for one of those, and Matt always turns around very quickly and provides that information. We've had several neighborhoods reach out to us and ask for a specific example within their neighborhood. We have one neighborhood that really wants to annex, but there's one parcel in between them and the neighborhood that is precluding our efforts. But there are neighborhoods right on the edge of the city that do want to be part of this community. And so these are our continuous objectives that we are working on. We continue to make annexation a priority. We want to make sure that today was not intended to identify specific annexation efforts. We have a lot of them on the table. We are working with many of our community partners to try to bring more to you all on annexation, but didn't want to really go into that level of detail this evening. Rather, we wanted to share our progress on our upcoming goals for annexation before your budget consideration. We have our continuous objectives, which is to extend our city limit line along all the corridors, and we will be enlisting your help in annexation, both by assisting us in conversations to help us with the annexation and through funding. One thing is that we will be asking for funding to assist in open space and strip acquisition in order to bring in additional properties to the city. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Shannon, once we annex a property, and I guess I'm not talking about a little one, but, big with a significant number of residents, that comes into play as we look at our redistricting efforts. How long does it take from the time it's approved, or I guess an application is submitted, to the time our GIS map is adjusted to reflect that?
I would say about 120 days, because you have to go through the planning commission process first. So by the time when it's applied, there's about 30 to 45 day waiting period before the public hearing at the planning commission. Then beyond that, we have to bring it to city council for 2 readings of an ordinance. So, and those usually come 30 days after the planning commission. So at that point, we're at 60 days. Then the next ordinance, you're probably at 80 days. That's if there's no, hiccups along the way, no delays, something of that nature. And then once it becomes effective, a notice is sent out to all of our teams, including GIS, and they're very quick at turning it around. Denisha and Carmen do a great job of having that information on there fairly quick, but I would say the quickest is 90, probably the average is 120.
And Dorothy, the GIS is really quick. As a matter of fact, they already have the Conesty annexation on GIS.
So all, as we work on these annexations and you've got them laid out on a timeline, it does affect redistricting. So I just, the connecting of those dots has to be made at the staff level.
Yes, and we have 4 going on planning commission in April. Now, we do usually hold them until the second meeting of the, so if it goes to the planning commission, we normally don't bring our planning commission items to you all until the second meeting of city council every month. If you would like, I can work with the team and we can try to start bringing those on the first meeting of council after planning commission, which would shorten that period a little bit. It would take 14 days out of the process.
I think anything, again, just like you started out with the fees and all that, I think anything in the process side, in most cases, I mean, to be successful in annexation, if we've learned anything for the last many, many years, we have to be sort of swift and agile and get in there and do it. Otherwise, all kind of things can happen. And we've been successful in so many in the past. There were some big ones that we did that way. But anything in the process, I think that can be made shorter is a good thing.
We're happy to do that. We can make that adjustment.
Also, Shannon, a small thing, the Columbia and Charleston both have calculators on their website where you can plug in your tax ID number or your lot number, and it'll calculate the cost of annexation.
That's a really good idea. Yeah. That's what people want to know. How much is it going to cost me? And of course, they're very surprised that it actually costs less being in the city.
Many times it
We
does.
see that so many times now, but they don't believe it till they see it themselves.
Why don't you put a QR code on some of your materials? It takes them straight to a calculator.
That's a good idea.
Good
We could
idea.
do that. But we're very fortunate. Matt turns those around for us. We have people ask all the time for a specific calculation, and it's shocking how oftentimes I think people do expect it to be higher, and it's actually not.
Yeah.
And I think it just goes to show, that you can have the kind of services that our community and our city provide. And sometimes it doesn't cost you anything more, at least financially that way, not through taxation. So I think there's many reasons to be within the city of Greenville, and some of which we've outlined tonight. But mostly, I mean, if it saves you money, that's the number one for most people. But to save money and have an opportunity to participate in the city of Greenville process.
And we learned again tonight, if somebody in your family has a heart attack or something, if you're in the city, you get service a lot faster than if you're in the county for EMS. So that's another real practical effect. And tools in the toolbox, you mentioned annexation strips. We have a number of strip discussions going on right now, thanks to you guys. Do we have tools in the toolbox on the strip in terms of money to offer people to do a strip? I really don't know the answer to that question. Do we have money to offer? We have a couple of strips and you know which one I'm talking about. I think some cash would make a big difference, but we need to have that ability. You're looking at the manager and he's looking.
You want to explain that?
Yes,
Well,
there's an
Mr. Mayor,
opportunity.
maybe we can explain that.
Like, do you make it contiguous and annex by contiguous?
it's
No, I know. I think we got some council members with some questions
Oh.
what that
Go ahead.
means.
strip.
Strip.
So you don't, sometimes to get over here, we need to get the piece in between, but maybe they don't want to annex the whole thing, but they'll give us a right-of-way strip. Yeah. Really common with other cities, but usually you got to pay someone for it. It could be based on fair market value, or it's just a flat amount of money. Say, hey, we have some like a church or nonprofit, for example, where there's a church out there. And we would just whether the church wants to come in or not and deal with the politics, that could take forever. But on the strip thing, if we offered the church, $5,000 to annex for the strip, they may consider that real money.
Thank God for Ron McKinney giving us that information. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great job, though. Okay. Oh, what do we have next here? Consent agenda? Or consent agenda. Just have one item on that. Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington. Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor Knox White.
Aye. Thank you. New business 15A.
An ordinance amending Chapter 8 Businesses of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Greenville pertaining to business license, tax, and other business regulations.
Your motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Matt, you have something you wanted to?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, it's our pleasure to be here tonight to offer these amendments to the business license ordinance. These are what I would call non-substantive changes to the ordinance. They are primarily fixes and corrections from our adoption back in November. The first of which is to authorize the repeal of section 878 of the prior business license ordinance. That was just missed in the numbering of the repeal and replace. So no impact of that action other than clarifying for the codifier that is correct. Number two, clarifying that the business license incentive authorized for annex properties, speaking of our last subject, applies only to voluntary annexations and not those required by utility covenants. And so it is a true incentive. It's offered to those who come in on their own without having been required to do so. Number three, adding Arcadia Hills to the list of authorized special emphasis neighborhoods for the grocery store incentive. That was just an oversight. And then finally, there's a reference in one of the tiered incentives to building permit fees. It was not intended to be applied to that category of incentives. And so this is simply a strike through of that section. I'll happy to answer any questions you all have.
Any questions? We had motion and second, so clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor Knox White.
Aye. 15B,
Ordinance to adopt the flood insurance rate map and the flood insurance study for the city of Greenville effective May 4th, 2021 by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and to amend Chapter 19.7 Stormwater Management of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Greenville.
So moved.
motion is a second. Motion and a second. Paul?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'll give a brief summary and update of floodplain regulations. About every 5 years, federal and then state agencies will audit and they'll take a deep dive of our floodplain regulations. Starting in December of 2020, that's when FEMA started theirs, and they started most of 2021 until that was finished. April 2022 is when our new CRS FEMA class will be effective. So usually they send a letter to the mayor's office. And we'll see that we're still at class 5. So following that FEMA audit was the state audit, and that occurred in February. And in March, they have asked us to adopt the countywide flood insurance study. So nothing on what you're seeing here for the agenda affects within the city of Greenville other than the adoption of that FEMA flood insurance study.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.